Hey folks, how's it going? It's been a while now that I wanted to put some order back into my team comps. I realized I was using a few a bit less than I wanted, and I've started to need other comps as well that didn't really fit in the way I had things set up, so this might be a bit weird. It's very likely to get real boring real quick, but if you've got OCD, it might just scratch that itch. Here's how I've had my team set up until now. The generic one for full auto is probably going to keep the first slot in every element. Lumberjack with Splitting Spirit makes things too easy. The attack slot doesn't really work outside of Guild War. Racing for blue chest sometimes requires 2 or 3 turns, and good luck getting those on a charge attack based setup that requires a 1 long call on turn 2, especially on a European ping. I think this lot will go to burst comps with Luchador and Assassins, while the Guild War OTK setups will be moved somewhere else. I also want both a normal and a strike time setup for Guild Wars 2, so that's going to take 2 slots. For the others, it's going to depend based on the content that I need to farm. Some of the raids listed I've never really touched, or they're fun to be run with the full auto team, and I don't think I've used this pattern in a while now, so those are 2 dead slots at the moment. Alright, let's go over the various raids and see what they require. The lower level Magnus just got their Hot Pro skip, and I usually do this with R and SR teams to farm pendants. I want to keep these 2 as well for Arc Armor restrictions. Same goes for the Magnus. I just run this on full auto with an SR team. Leveling them up gives crystals from milestone trophies, so why not? Tier 1 summons are the first fights to have some mechanics to them, but countering these doesn't go beyond carrying a Veil or a Clear, and there are characters who can do that on full auto now. Tier 2 summons follow the same pattern, most just inflict a few debuffs, except Deadly Lich. Still, I barely touch these, and if I need to farm enemas I can just one punch them from Twitter. Proto-Baja and Grand Order fall in the same category. Grand Order apparently got a blue box, but an attack team will take care of that. Panlong and Killing aren't really hosted, and it's something I should get around doing myself, since the single ones host chest have the same drop rate for gold bus than the duo version, while only costing 1 seal to host. Normal Primarch raids have fallen a bit off the radar, and the enemas can be dropped from Ultimate Bahamut and the 4 Primarch raids too. The last tier of the normal raids is just Ultimate Bahamut, for which I normally do trains with an OTK team. So let's move on to the high level ones. These should be a bit more interesting. Magna high levels all have similar requirements, simply inflicting a few debuffs. Kind of the same goes for the tier 1 high levels. The only one breaking the bolt would be Rose Queen, which I wouldn't full auto just because I don't have Alanan backline yet. The Magna 2 raids are all fairly easy as well, but this is where the blue chest farm really kicks off. For this I will want a decent burst team. Kind of the same would go for the Huanglong and Killing, since this raid kind of needs to be run in a train and it's unlikely that I'll ever get a second turn in. The tier 3 summons have a couple more things to watch out for, but other than the Anubis staff there really isn't much to farm here. I still have to do the solos, but that's a one-time thing. 200k honors for a blue chest means it's one punch material too. The Melis tier raids are where things start getting a bit more hairy. For farming them, a burst team should still be more than enough to contribute to the kill, while the solos might take a bit more planning to do. Next up is a series of raids, each of which would require its own separate slot, with Proto-Bahamut high level requiring constant veils and clears, and Akasha and Grand Order high level requiring 1.5 million euros for their blue chests. While Akasha is easily dealt with using the standard Dark Burst setup with the Luchador, Grand Order kind of hates that. So the 2 teams for PBHL and Grand Order will take their own slots in the 7th tab. Moving on, we've got the Dragons, and while these are usually farmed using a burst setup to reach the honor quota as soon as possible, people tend to leave the raids after hitting theirs, and as much as I'd like to believe to be done with these solo fights, part of me is sure that those materials will be required for the 6-star Eternals, alongside the mats from other currently dead raids like the 4 Primarchs and Grand Order high level. So I would like to reserve 1 slot per element to a solo or a safe team for them. UBHL is going to take its own slot in the 7th tab as well, and the only 2 raids left are Lucilius high level and Beelzebub. Both raids I should really start doing, but I feel uncomfortable doing with randoms and most of my crew is US based, so I rarely catch them doing those. Still, plenty of slots where to prep those teams. The other types of content left would be the Guild War fights, which are going to take 2 slots for the EX plus OTK, but the Nightmare 90 and 95 are usually fairly easy, so I guess the Burst and the Full Auto team can take care of those, leaving the Nightmare 100 and 150, which I think can be condensed in a single slot. 20 boxing the story events can be easily taken care of by the Guild War EX Plus teams, so all there's really left is the normal Acarum Flame Damage team for fast clears, 1 slot for slamming characters, and maybe 1 for classes. The Guild War Nightmare 100 and 150 teams can be disbanded after the fights are over, and I would still keep 1 slot open in each element for trying out new stuff and eventual new content. As for the teams themselves, I'm afraid it might be a bit too much to go over them all, but generally I'll prefer characters with fewer skill casts for full auto to make things go a bit faster. Grand Monica, for example, only uses 1 skill every 3 turns, while Andira only uses 2 out of her 4. Bringing clear on MC is also going to lower the amount of button presses, while still working as a safety net when running into stuff for the first time. Here's a list of characters who I think were great for full auto comps. Most of them only cast 2 skills, with the exception of some pretty broken buffers. Of course, most characters can work just fine on full auto, unless they use their skills in a weird order like Tien or Fro, or if they have a 0 cooldown skill that they turn off on their own, like Magiza and Romeo. But as nice as characters like Zeta or Sammartina can be, they do tend to spam a bit too many skills. The burst teams are going to be pretty standard luchador ones. Lucky Mimlemel and Alalan in fire means having to rely on Bandit and Tien. Water might be in a bit of a pinch as well, since I don't have Uno 5-star or Summer Narmea, but Honor Generation with Rising Force, Doggo and Bonito isn't that big of a problem. If I manage to get lucky and pull Christmas Mirin, that's going to be 7 Ogis with 1 button. Earth has Christmas Naru, and that's all the element really needs. Wind can run Nezawal Pili and Lisha, while I'm about to spark Granjan to try and fix my light setup, and the Dark one has been complete for a while now. Despite a fairly large list of mechanics to counter, the spec teams might actually be some of the easier ones to put together. Most just need clear, dispels, gravity and delays. Everything else is going to need to be set up as the game requires it. Alright then, that's it for this out of season spring cleaning. If you've made it this far, thank you a lot for listening to me ramble about, and I hope this was a useful example to help you set up your own stuff. For now, that's going to be it from me. See you soon. Ciao!